that's really important because people are much more likely to like fund your company or hire you if you show that you're trustworthy. And one of the best ways to do that is through references. And so I think like that was the first thing that came to mind was like I started looking up people at Shopify that I was interviewing with, and I realized that I had a mutual connection with the president of the company. And so I reached out to a friend of a very close friend of mine who knows him from their time in Montreal, my friend Greg, and I asked him, I said, hey, if you truly believe I'd be a great fit, I'd appreciate an intro or some sort of like endorsement. And it was never like, hey, I need a favor, please hype me.
All right, welcome to Founder Mode, episode 5. Here we go, Kev.
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. I'm excited about today. This is a topic I'm pretty fired up about. We're talking about this idea that changes everything for a founder. Asking. A single request can open a door that you didn't think you could open. And I'm just excited to see where this conversation takes us and what doors we can open.
Yeah, we all hesitate at times. I think it's I don't know, at least personally, like you always have this sort of anxiety or worry about looking desperate or pushy, but when you do it right, it really can like crack open, a big thing, whether it's funding, partnerships, a new business, a hire. But I think before we jump into it, I mean, what's new with you? How are things?
Things are good, man. Just did the spring break with the kids, so feeling rested and recharged. Got a little bit of that vacation energy in me.
The glow.
Yeah, I'm thinking about asking for some stuff today. I don't know. Actually, I put an ask out today. I asked one of our earliest clients for a reference for another new client we're talking to, and I got a nice immediate reply. Sure thing. So I'm feeling lucky. I'm rolling it. I'm rolling it forward.
I like it.
What's going on with you, Kevin? What's the update? What are you working on? Have you read anything that's particularly interesting recently?
Cool. I did read some, like, this was about a week ago now, but I just can't stop thinking about it. Is this AI 2027? I don't know if you've seen this article. It's like,
yes, I have.
It's a really, really cool view and basically, kind of a prediction of like where AI is going to go by a few folks that have kind of been in the industry, deep in OpenAI in particular, and sort of understanding like how that's going to work, kind of this geopolitical moving with the president and China and chips. But the thing that shocked me the most, but it's not surprising as I think of a lot of things in business, is that they focus mostly on the speed of learning. Like how quickly can they teach AI to get better at being AI? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the models and, honestly, all the best models that they have aren't released to the public. They're focused internally on just becoming better at AI research and better at sort of evolving how AI is built.
Story that I'll share is early in my career at Google, one of my mentors, an early manager of mine, said something to me that really stuck with me as one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten, which is ask for 100% of what you want. It just like, I think a lot of people negotiate against themselves. Like they come into a conversation, whether it's, trying to get a job, trying to get a promotion, negotiating with a romantic partner, like working in life and business to try to get to something. And instead of asking for exactly what they want, they ask for less because they feel like they can't ask for all of it.
I think the other piece is sometimes you ask for the more flexible vehicle. I remember when we were negotiating the acquisition to Microsoft, one of my partners, Javier, was having a conversation with some of the executives and said, hey, it would be, we're going from San Francisco to Redmond a lot, can we get the jet card or can we fly in the jet? And, really senior guy at Microsoft says, no, you're asking for the wrong thing. Don't ask for the jet card. Just ask for a raise or ask for the ability to just travel and expense it. He's like, the jet's not the best way to get there. There's going to be a lot of places where you want to just get on a commercial plane or fly first class. And that's actually going to be a more comfortable way. There's going to be more runs. And it was pretty funny because it was like such a simple, sweet tweak in the ask of saying like, no, the jet card also triggers all kinds of weird things where they're like, hey, you're going to fly the jet. But they're like, no. What you really want is just the ability and the freedom to make that part of your sort of travel curriculum so that you're not spending as much time away from your family. You're able to optimize your travel. And what you really want is the money to fund that, and then you can choose the modality, right? Like don't pick a car if like, the plane ends up being the right path. Hey, the train may be the right path. Like just pick what you need to sort of enable your flexibility in travel, not necessarily a specific, sort of ask, which I thought was a really cool way of rephrasing it.
Good feedback. So we've got Andreas Homer with us today. He has mastered the art of asking in business, and he led BD at Microsoft. He was a part of your team at Authentically. He's founded startups and now is at Shopify. So let's see how he does it. All right, Andreas, great to have you here. Welcome. You've built a ton of startups in mobile AI. You've led business development at Microsoft. Now you lead product partnerships at Shopify. So let's start with kind of what made you want to tackle so many different roles at a young age. Give us a little bit more of the context on your journey.
Yeah, no, 100%. I worked really closely with Kevin, as you know, for some time at Acompli and then through the acquisition at Microsoft, and learned a lot from Kevin. He's like the master of efficiency. But yeah, I think, really comes down to like curiosity for me and really wanting to learn constantly. And I think at Acompli, for example, was my second gig out of school. And I started out on the product side, doing everything from marketing to some product management and growth, and then transitioned into partnerships, really focused on like growth and engagement. And so just wearing a lot of hats like early on at Path and then Acompli really piqued my interest in startups and really just continuing to learn and particularly like work with people who had done a lot previously. Like Kevin had done a ton in email and enterprise, and that was an area that I actually didn't have experience in. I had worked in consumer social at Path for a couple years. And so when I saw that, Satish had seeded them, Satish at Redpoint, I was like, wait, this is a really cool opportunity because I've learned for the last 2+ years, like how to ship apps and what a beautifully designed product looks like and how to get there. And then Kevin and Javier and JJ had like this crazy amount of enterprise experience, having like exited Zimbra and Hyperic. And so, yeah, it was kind of like a match made in heaven. I remember when I went to meet Kevin, he's like, hey, you're at this kind of sexy consumer social company. Why do you want to come work on enterprise and email? And I really, at the time, was like, hey, first, I want to win. I know you guys know how to win. And secondly, I have something I can bring to the table here, which is experience launching really great apps cross platform. And you guys can teach me about enterprise. And so it was like, I remember actually saying that, and I got an offer from them like the next day. So yeah, I think like really what it comes down to is just like not chasing titles, but really solving big problems and staying curious. So if that means like taking on product partnerships one day and then leading a product team the next, like I'm game.
Dude, you're always known for like, kind of having somebody to call. Like, I just think of you're just like the like. How did you figure that out? Like, was that a learned skill or just your nature to ask for help? Like, how did you sort of come up with this like, yeah, this sort of networking vibe that's to me is like one of the most like incredible qualities that transcends you.
Yeah, I think, well, first off, like it became just a necessity, especially in being in such small companies. Like our company was so small and we had no choice but to reach out constantly. And what I learned was like that genuine curiosity and like having like clear asks for people really did open doors. So yeah, I think just really what it came down to is like, realized particularly in tech, we're lucky because a lot of people are willing to help if they're approached genuinely. And over time, like building a little bit of confidence and not being afraid to reach out and obviously highlight like mutual benefit because that's core like when you're doing things in business. But yeah, build like real relationships with people. I think it also takes practice. So it's like, it's not, you're not born with that skill. I think some people might be better than others, but it is learned. So you just know how to like phrase is your ask better next time. But yeah, I think if you're genuinely like curious and you show mutual benefit and you are humble, you can get really far with your relationships, particularly in tech. I think it's a special place for that.
I love the mutual benefit point. I think a lot of people forget about that and oftentimes are just thinking about themselves when making an ask. And so what you just described resonates deeply with me that what is in it for the person you're asking for something from, right? So you talk about the power of asking. And, I think in prior conversations you've had, you talk about clarity, fairness, conviction. Can you talk us through your mindset when it comes to asking and how it guides the way you decide to do things?
Yeah, for sure. I think over time, I've learned a lot about what clarity looks like, what really like how to frame an ask in a fair way and how to get to what fair means. And by conviction, really like showing that you're fully behind your ask. So it's really important, I think, to like first be really clear about what you're trying to do. And I get asked from people all the time where I don't really understand what they're asking me for. Sometimes I really do want to help them, but like, just being like direct and be fully behind your ask too. Like, what I mean by that is like, I'm sure you all experience this, but like sometimes people ask for things and then like the next day the ask has changed and you're like, wait a minute, you asked for my help on X and then now you're asking for C and you maybe spent some cycles because you like this person or right and you want to help them. So I think like, yeah, just being like super clear about having that like clarity, like what is it that you really are trying to do? And when I say fair, I think like making sure that like the ask is reasonable too and not like exploitative. And that's another huge thing because I think we've all gotten asks that aren't very reasonable.
Totally. Yeah, I remember hearing like you had friends of the interviewer when you were interviewing at Shopify, like during the process to sort of like reach out and like make connections, like kind of this second level titch. Like, how did you pull that off? Like without that feeling forced? I think to your point, like, was that a fair ask? And talk about it just like a genius strategy, first of all, of like saying, hey, I kind of know people that know you, and sort of help building that early credibility, sort of even before you know cut through there. Like, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
For sure. I think one of the really cool parts about you know, interviewing or fundraising is really like embracing the fact that like isn't purely an objective game. Like there's a there's a social component, there's an emotional component, and I think people often forget that. Like they might be a really good fit for an investor or for a role, but you really want to also show that like you're trustworthy and that you have credibility and that's really important because people are much more likely to like fund your company or hire you if you show that you're trustworthy. And one of the best ways to do that is through references. And so I think like that was the first thing that came to mind was like I started looking up people at Shopify that I was interviewing with, and I realized that I had a mutual connection with the president of the company. And so I reached out to a friend of a very close friend of mine who knows him from their time in Montreal, my friend Greg, and I asked him, I said, hey, if you truly believe I'd be a great fit, I'd appreciate an intro or some sort of like endorsement. And it was never like, hey, I need a favor, please hype me.
Hmm.
I actually like made it really clear, like, if you think I'm a really great fit for this role, and I explained it to him, I was like, this is product partnerships, doing X, Y, Z. And so like I was really authentic with him and I said no pressure whatsoever. I think that's also super important where it's like, yeah, you want to be grounded, you want to be clear, you want to make sure your ask is reasonable. But also give people an out. Like you're not entitled to anybody's help per se, particularly in business. Like people do things because they make sense. They're not, most of the time. So if someone thinks you're a great fit for a role or they think that you're a great fit for a venture fund, like they'll make that intro. But I think it's super important to, particularly if you have a relationship with that person, to just give them an out and be like, look, there's no pressure whatsoever. I know could be like a really sensitive relationship, so don't be shy in saying no. Not taking that personally. It can be hard for sure, but people, when you're making a reference, that's a big reflection on you. So we've all gotten requests from people who we might like, that might be someone we've like had fun with and gone on cool trips with, but we're like, you know what? I don't know if you're the right person for that role that you're asking me for, but I think I might know someone else who's hiring for something that might be a better fit, right? So anyway, yeah, I think like uh really figuring out like a fair ask, right? Like I felt like it was a fair ask and he ended up making the call and saying, I don't know exactly what he said, but I know Andreas. I've, aware of like his caliber of work and et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, I got the job, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's I think the point that you made about it being reasonable to ask and then giving people the out, I love that. So I'd love to hear about a time where you asked for something that was pretty bold, like funding or a key kind of job or hire. How did you do it and how did it kind of shape that interaction, that path?
Yeah, for sure. I think uh, asking for funding is uh, really, I mean, it's a process, it's a full-time job, right? Like you're gonna have some people, they might have a really easy time fundraising. I think it's the rare exception where they have a hot company that takes off due to virality, or maybe they have a founding team out of a research institution and there's immediately like interest in their company. But fact of the matter is like that's not how most companies fundraise. The vast majority, like you actually have to treat it like a full-time job and like go for it and have as many meetings as possible scheduled in a short period of time. Not just to build, like, people talk about momentum, but really to practice your ask, which is, I'm fundraising for this company. This is what we're trying to achieve. Here's our team. Here's our vision. And you see what resonates with those investors.
When you're raising money, like how do you frame that ask so that they see the bigger vision right away?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really one of the most, someone simplified this for me. I don't remember who it was, Kevin. It might have been you, but I simplified the whole thought process as like, we're here now, and in 18 months, we're going to be at X, which unlocks an even bigger Y. And here's the data to prove it's possible. So like really communicating that scale, I think is one of the most important things in that process is like, start with a crisp explanation of like what the pain point is, and then paint the big possibility while also showing like the next milestone and other things like macro tailwinds. So I think, yeah, really just simplifying it. Like, here's where we are now. This is where we want to go, and this is what we need to get there. And one interesting thing about this whole topic is like the different hats that you have to wear as an entrepreneur. Like, talking to your investors is very different than talking to your users and talking to your team, right? When you're talking to an investor, particularly early stage, it's like about painting this really aspirational picture about what you want to build. And really, like, it's a power law. They want that really big return, which is how these funds survive. Well, that's a really different perspective than how you speak to an end user. Like, they don't care about your fundraising or your team. They're like, solve my problem.
But I
Build a
think
product.
both are time box, which I like the way you framed that is like, hey, we're going to do X by Y in Z time. And like that to me, and I think the similar with the user, it's like, hey, we're going to solve this problem. And I think that time boxing sort of aspect, help makes the vision a little more concrete and a little more real. Cause it's like, hey, this isn't just some pie in the sky. It's going to happen eventually. It's like, no. And here's my plan and data to support that. I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and I
Totally.
wonder about the three different constituents you just talked about too. It's like, how do you ask for things differently between investors, users, and team members?
Well, I think the first investors, again, like particularly in tech, like every industry is different, but in tech, it's like one of the things that can make it really hard for you to fundraise is by not telling an aspirational story and just like painting a story of like a lifestyle business or maybe something that's like too incremental. And a lot of it, like, there's a question that you get asked a lot in fundraising, which is like, how is this going to be $1 billion company? And the first reaction a lot of founders have to that is like, maybe not so positive. They're like, wait a minute, I have two people. Like, how can I even think about like $1 billion company? But I quickly realized when I was fundraising, I was like, wait, that's purely just a test to see how big you're thinking. Like, of course, you have to be tactical and like build a product and solve a problem and hire people, but like you also need to have this grander vision of like where you want to go. If you're asking for venture capital, that is.
If a partner or investor says no, like how do you keep the door open for later?
Yeah, I think that's a a topic that I think particularly every first time founder should uh, emphasize and study up, because it really does impact, I think, your future fundraising potentially, even if you do get a no. So someone also once said to me like, every no is one step closer to a yes, which is very
No
much.
is way better than no response and getting
Yeah.
ghosted.
Exactly. Yeah, someone once said that, and it's so true. But one thing that I think an important caveat there is that yes could be from the same person when you're fundraising for your next company. So maybe it's a no now, but it could be a yes later if you do handle the rejection gracefully. So I think it's really important for founders to know, and I have to remind myself of this when I'm fundraising. It's like nobody has all the answers. If they did, their hit rate would be way higher than it is. And so you're looking at a success rate of at the top of the game, the Midas touch, right? Sometimes single digit percentage in terms of overall bets. And so I think like you have to go into every pitch hoping that you're going to learn something. You might not, but the key is to like stay in touch, maybe keep them updated and respect their perspective, even if you don't agree with it, because it's a long game and you will probably be fundraising again for something. And who knows, if they like you, they might invest in your company either in your next round, which did happen, by the way. there were investors that I had talked to, and I was like, in my head, I'm like, I respectfully disagree with this take, but let's keep in touch. Like, I'd love to put you on our investor update list and keep in touch. And I actually had a couple people who ended up investing in the next round. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something interesting there when the timing isn't right. How do you think about following up and not being pushy?
Yeah, I think there's so many similar situations that people have in life where whether it's like trying to find the right person for you in dating or trying to find the right job or trying to find an investor, and everything is at the end of the day about timing. And, it's really uncomfortable if an investor passes on a company and the person responds back to them with something like very bitter. And the same thing would go for, if you're dating somebody and they say, hey, look, like, I don't think this is the right fit for me, but I really like you as a person and I hope that we can stay in touch. It's not the right time, right? Like that, maybe that, and you might feel completely differently. Like, wait, no, your fund is an exact fit. Like you invest in this area exactly. Or what do you mean? I check all your boxes. Like I'm the best person ever for you. You just don't know it now. Right. Like those are very kind of uncomfortable responses for people. And so I think like just like taking a deep breath, right? Like put it in the drafts folder. Don't click send.
Yeah, the desperation that doesn't land well.
Yeah, exactly. And it also shows like a scarcity mindset where it's like, you just have to realize like whether you're looking for a job, you're looking for funding, you're looking for really the one, right? Your romantic partner. Like there are a lot of people out there. There's a lot of capital out there. There are a lot of jobs. Like things end up working out. And I think sometimes like if people approach that from like a scarcity mindset, it really ends up like sending just negative signal around the board, right? Because people talk, right? And so yeah, I think like just being really just gracious and like, people don't have all the answers. Life's about timing and respect it, move on, and just keep chugging. There are people who you will find that love your company, that love you, that want to hire you, and focus on that. Go where the love is.
I think, yeah, I think you hitting, I mean, the timing thing's an incredible point. It's like, when you're looking for a great timing around, getting great talent or people to join your startup, like how do you present that as an opportunity rather than a risk?
Yeah, for sure. I think the risk calculation is very different for different peoples. If you're like straight out of college or a few years out of college or generally like unencumbered, like you're not maybe married, you don't have kids yet, you don't have a mortgage, like your risk calculation is quite different. And so I think like at the end of the day, so my dad was very good friends with Ram Dass. I don't know if you know who Ram Dass
Oh
is?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so he actually like married my parents and they were very close and sent a letter when my younger sister was born. And his whole thing, like he always used to tell my dad, and I tried to find this in like public transcripts or like interviews and his book, and it never actually came up anywhere that I've seen, but he used to tell my dad, work is an excuse to interact with other people. And I thought that was really profound. And he told me that like when I was just starting my career. And it was at that point that I realized like, you know what? I need to optimize for people. And I could be working on the most mundane thing ever. Like, I got to be real, like some of the products I've worked on, they're not the most exciting thing ever, right? Mobile email is not the most exciting thing ever.
What?
Uh, yeah. Can you believe it? I mean, it is like fulfilling to like, see people save time and like be more efficient and that sort of thing. But like, there's levels to like sexiness, right, with companies. But you know what? It didn't matter because I was working with like some of the best operators and most talented people in the industry. And that made it fun and really exciting. And so, I think that's one question that if you're trying to hire like a key person, first, like, knowing their risk tolerance, I think is really important and giving them maybe a way to adjust that. Like, hey, I understand you have, mortgage or whatnot. Like, let's explore ways where maybe we give you a little more cash and a little less equity, or maybe vice versa if you're earlier in career. So you can adjust that risk scale for people. And then also just like emphasizing like, hey, we're a small team. We really like you. We are going to be working super closely together. You're going to have autonomy. You're not going to have a 8-layer reporting role that you have right now at said company, and you're going to grow. You're going to shape this company. You're going to shape the trajectory, and you're going to share in the upside of that. And hopefully it's going to be tough, but we're going to have fun along the way. So of course there's things like, traction and funding and having a live product. But I think like, again, like going beyond the objective and like looking at the social and the emotional part, it's like emphasize like the team and make someone feel like they're part of something that's gonna make them grow, that you're sensitive to their needs around like risk. And maybe you adjust that with equity and cash potentially. And yeah, just really like show that ownership, right? You don't get that in bigger companies or even like growth stage startups. Like you're there to do a really specific job. So yeah, I think like you can tell a really compelling story to a talented person. And you know what? I think this is really, really important. I haven't mentioned this. Like if the person's like really kind of like, oh, you guys can't pay me as much. I have all these RSUs. And it's like, that's not the right person.
Yep.
Right. Like they might be the most talented person on paper and they might have shipped some really cool stuff. But if they're like apprehensive and they want, some crazy salary and they're not seeing the big picture, like that could very easily be like a bad hire. So find someone who's aligned. There's a lot of people out there, like I was saying before.
I love the focus on people. I think that's right. And very, very important because we're not just talking about ones and zeros here. What's the one thing that if somebody doesn't remember anything we talked about here in this conversation, but they remember one thing, what would you want to leave them with?
I think I'd say the key to everything that we've talked about is authenticity and just showing that you are aware of your environment, the people around you, and being as authentic and reasonable as fair as you can be. I think like just staying true to yourself, and people have different ways of like expressing themselves, asking for things. But at the end of the day, like it has to come from somewhere that is authentic. So be yourself and don't try to be anyone else. And I learned that from someone that Kevin and I worked really closely with, Tamara Steffens.
Oh,
And
incredible.
yeah, she's incredible. Talk about the power of asking. Like a lot of the things I'm talking about, I actually learned from her. But what's really interesting is like we have completely different styles. Like and she's embraced my style, which is like it's a lot more kind of like, diplomatic and like very, very even keeled. And Tamara is like, she's a fireball, right? And it works for her. Like she's authentically that person. And like, she's really funny and really smart, but like we operate in a completely different way. And I remember her telling me like a year or two working for her, she goes, don't ever change. The way you work is different than me. So just remember that. Like we both achieve similar things. We just have different ways of doing it.
So good, man. No, this is incredible. Where do folks finally find you online? Like, how can folks look you up?
Yeah. So if you want to go, I have a personal site, andreasdre.com, ANDREASDRE.com. And I have just like a little bio and a couple links on there where you can find me and get in contact.
Very cool. Andreas, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you coming out and always good to see you and spend some time with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. Thank
Thanks
you,
for
Jason.
being here.
That was Andreas. I mean, showing us how to ask, with clarity, fairness, conviction. I hope it inspired, everyone to kind of think about, just making an extra ask, reaching out, starting a few conversations you've been putting off, and you'll be surprised with the impact. And I think Andreas really walking through, sort of his journey of getting there was pretty cool, right? I mean, kind of starting with this, just the power of asking and how much he's gotten out of his career so far, how he's applied it to fundraising, to networking, to building team and culture, but sort of really summarizing it at the end with just this notion of authenticity and focusing on the people, right? It's not about the what, it's the who. Like, who are you playing the game with? Who's in your sort of network? Who's in your contact database? And how are you sort of keeping those connections warm and doing that with an authentic way, which is your voice, right? Don't borrow somebody else's technique. Use your own.
Yeah. If I were to change the way we're describing this conversation now, I would say ask authentically, right? That's the power that Andreas took us through. This was great. If you liked this episode, please subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear Andreas's approach. Follow us across channels, subscribe to the Founder Mode newsletter, and looking forward to hearing what you think. Please leave us a message in the comments. And next episode is a bit of a surprise, so we hope you like it. I think it's going to be good.
Thanks for listening. Remember, it all starts with a simple ask.